As an IBCLC, it is incredibly important to me that all of my clients feel like the information I am giving them is not the same things that they could find just by doing a Google search or asking in a mom group. I find it incredibly important as an IBCLC to do a lot of information gathering and listening and trying to fully understand where the breastfeeding difficulty is now, where it has been in the past, and what the goals are for resolving the difficulty before I can begin to provide advice or assistance about how to move forward. I have a special treat for you today because I had somebody reach out wanting to do a consultation to try to help her 7-month-old get over breast refusal. And as you will hear, this client is not a newbie to breastfeeding, is very well educated about breastfeeding, has done a lot of solution seeking. And so I did not think that I was going to be able to create a magic bullet that would fix this complex difficulty right away. But what I wanted to do was provide a menu of options for her to try that are specific to clues that I hear within a conversation that might be contributing to the difficulty. And I was not able to bill this client's insurance. And so she agreed to allow me to share her voice and her likeness as my client so that you could hear a full lactation consultation between me and a client. This is a virtual consultation trying to problem solve helping her 7-month-old do more daytime at the breastfeeding. I am so thankful to Tara for allowing me to share both the video, which you can find on YouTube, and the audio. And I hope that anyone who is struggling with breast refusal can use some of these tips. Now, you might not have the same exact situation. So if your baby is refusing the breast and you would like to have a consultation, please reach out to me. I can bill your insurance, you can pay out of pocket, or if you're willing to share with the world and I'm not able to bill your insurance, then I would happily do an on-air lactation consultation that we share with listeners so that you can try to get your problem solved as well. So reach out to me at lo@quavinbirthservices.com. Before Tara begins to explain all the background information leading up to her current difficulty with breastfeeding her baby, I'm going to share with you my appreciation and love for Feast and Fettle, my sponsor. When you choose to get home-cooked meals delivered right to your door, you're supporting me as well. When I first returned to work, I had no idea how I was going to manage going to work, handling drop-offs and pickups, and doing all the other duties I needed to do, like get dinner on the table. If you are in this situation, I've got a solution for you. Go to feastandfettle.com, where you can select from a menu of delicious options and have home-cooked meals delivered right to your front door. Imagine taking meal planning off your plate, taking grocery shopping off your plate for those dinners, and knowing that all you have to do is pick up your baby, get home, and heat and serve meals that you have selected for your family. If you live in Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, New Hampshire, and now Maine, go to feastandfettle.com and use my code MILK, M-I-L-K, to get $30 off your first order. You've got nothing to lose. Okay, Tara. So you reached out to me because you've had a really difficult time with breastfeeding.
And my little guy's giving me some fits.
Yeah. So tell me like the backstory. You know, we've chatted a little over text and email, but what do you think is relevant for me to know here in this moment before we get into problem solving?
Sure. So, just as a quick backstory, I have an older child too. My daughter is going to be 3 in January, and I had no issues with her nursing. She was quite the
Mm.
opposite and never took a bottle. So I went into didn't she didn't get into taking a bottle until after she was a year old. Then exclusively nursed her that entire first year. So I went into my son, who's 7 months now, with that mentality of, oh, this is going to be a piece of cake, no problem. Everything went great with Vienna, not going to be an issue. And he initially, my supply came in pretty early this time. I think it came in like day 2 or 3. With her, it was like day 4 or 5.
Mm-hmm.
And really came in heavy and fast. And I think that was part of the issue initially with him, was that my flow was just heavy. And to the point where he was like choking, he would pop off, and I was like literally spraying him in the face. Like, it was just so forceful. And that would happen more during the night where he was like groggy and sleepy. So it would be an issue overnight. I initially started bottle feeding him overnight to control it a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
And which kind of has flipped a little bit since then. And now he will nurse overnight when he's groggy, but during the day, he's just entirely too distracted, or just impatient. And I'm just having trouble getting him to nurse again during the day. So I'm pumping quite often.
Yeah. And are you with him full time?
I am with him quite a bit. I work from home mostly, so there's only really one day where I'm out of the house. I do have a sitter that's at the house while I'm working from home. So I do, of course, I'm bottle feeding him right now, but I definitely have the opportunity to nurse him, pretty much whenever needed. So that is beneficial, but has not proved worthy so far.
Yeah, that's so hard. And so you could, if you could get him back to body feeding, you could nurse him during the day while you were working. But right now you're pumping and the sitter is providing the bottle.
Yeah, either her or
Okay.
I
Okay.
for the most.
Okay, very good. And tell me a little bit about pumping. What is your pumping output? How does it feel? Do you make enough with the pump you're using? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so with my daughter, with her nursing, I froze, we're talking like 20, 30, 40 gallons of milk I was able to freeze from the Haka alone.
Wow.
I pumped a little bit with her, and I used a Medela pump with her. Towards the end of my journey with her nursing, I had bought the Willow Go. So I've been using that one since I had the baby, which has been a godsend because it's, of course, I can just pop it in and multitask with that in. First time I pump, first thing in the morning, usually about 6:30, 7 o'clock. And I tend to get, oh gosh, let's see, almost 10 ounces, 8 to 10 ounces in that pump.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's after he's nursed overnight. And then the last time he's probably nursed overnight would have been around 3 or 4 typically. And then, yeah, by 6:30 or 7, I'm typically getting about that much. Next pump I do is usually around 11 or 12, and I'm getting maybe 5 to 7 ounces at that pump. I would say typically I'm getting about 5 ounces through the rest of the day, with another pump around 3. Interestingly, when I pump right before bedtime for him around 6 or 6:30, that's probably the least I get throughout the day, and usually around maybe 4 at that time.
Okay.
And then I try to pump one more time around 9 if I have that ability to do so. Yeah, 4 or 5 times a day, and the biggest pump is first thing in the morning.
Yeah. And so then is there any nursing happening during the day at all? Or he just absolutely
Pretty
refuses?
much not right
Okay.
now. I definitely fell into a time frame here where it's just been, here's the bottle, here's the bottle, here's the bottle, because that's what he's fallen into, and then that's the routine we've gotten into.
Mhm.
I've tried the last several days, at least a few of the bottle times. I'm trying to be mindful to just offer him the breast and see if he's willing. And typically he's not. He'll turn away from me so hard, like he wants nothing to do with it.
Mhm.
And so I'm definitely trying to do that a little bit more, but he really has pretty much no interest during the day.
Okay. But in the night, he wakes one time?
He wakes a
He
lot
wakes
in
a
the
light
night.
a lot in the night. Okay.
Yeah, so, like, last night, for example, is a fairly good idea of what happens every night. So I put him down for bed, and I'm pretty strict with wake windows and everything, so I put him down for bed around 7:30 on most nights. Last night, it took me an hour and a half to get him
Mm.
down, and that was after he takes 10 ounces of milk out of a bottle right before bed. Like, he really gets a lot, and I try to slow it down in case he was getting, like, too much before bed, and maybe that was part of why he wasn't falling asleep. Some nights he will fall asleep really easily, but generally speaking, from the time he goes down till about midnight, he wakes multiple times. Doesn't typically nurse during those times he wakes. That's typically, "Let me get him comfortable again, let me rock him a little more, let me put his pacifier back in his mouth," which I have a love-hate relationship with. And then during the night, he's nursing, I would say twice, maybe around that midnight mark, and then again around 3 o'clock. Once in a while, if he hasn't quite woken up enough yet to realize what's happening,
Mhm.
then I may be able to nurse him once more at like 4 or 5 in the morning.
Okay. Wow. That's a lot.
Yeah, it is.
And
Yes, I'm exhausted.
I don't know what our mutual contact told you about my experience, but I had a situation very similar to this, and it
Mhm,
becomes your new normal, and then when you look at it on paper, you're like, "Why is this my new normal? This is horrible." Yeah,
exactly.
you expect it in the newborn stage, but by 7 months, it you keep hoping that something's going to change, that he's going to
Yes, you are not kidding.
yeah, that he's going to meet some developmental milestone or there's gonna be some magical thing that happens, and when it never does, it's so hard. Okay. Now, tell me a little bit about your history with lactation consults and trying to solve this difficult breastfeeding situation. What has
Um,
worked? What hasn't worked? What advice have you gotten?
so I haven't tried too much yet.
Okay.
As I mentioned to you, I did talk with another lactation consultant earlier this week, and I got off the phone with her and had to reiterate at the end of it just to make sure I tried to remember as many pieces as I could. So initially, she was thinking, maybe he wasn't getting enough milk during the day, and that was part of the waking at night. So she had made some suggestions, which again, I haven't really applied any of this yet, perhaps to maybe wake him towards the end of a nap while he's still groggy to see if he would nurse during those times. Once we got to talking about the numbers, she was actually surprised how much milk he was getting during the day because he is getting quite a bit. What other suggestions did she make? She actually said he's coming up on 8 months, and a lot of times things just completely change at 8 months. So she thought that maybe if I did nothing, things may change around that 8 month mark. Those were two of the bigger suggestions that she made. And of course, just trying to offer him to nurse more often, which I've been trying to do. I think those were some of her main suggestions. I did ask her a little bit about the bottle. Was there an issue with any of the bottles I was using or something I could change there? She didn't think so. So I think those were some of the main bullet points that she had suggested.
Okay. And did you ever see a lactation consultant early on with him?
I did
Okay,
not.
okay. Very good. All right. So, I have a few questions about how he is with the bottle. So, I've heard
Mhm.
your pumping output amounts. It is very common, by the way, for that evening pump to have the least amount of milk because your body just creates
Okay.
more milk in the morning. So
Mhm.
that's not a surprising pattern. But it looks like overall, if we go conservatively, you're making maybe like 22 to 26 ounces from pumping. Does that seem about right?
Yeah, I would say
Okay.
that.
And does he take all 22 to 24 ounces? Does he take everything you pump?
He does.
Okay.
I would say yes, he does, and at times, maybe 3 or 4 days a week, I will defrost a bag of milk, which is 5 ounces.
Okay.
My daughter, I think the only reason why I got her to wean was because I got pregnant and my supply dropped,
Mm.
otherwise she'd probably still be nursing,
Mhm.
and she's 3, so she will confiscate a bottle here and there, and claim it for herself, so she's still trying to get her share of mama's milk.
Uh-huh.
So, sometimes she may grab maybe 2 to 3 ounces a day, and sometimes she's taken the bottle and I don't even realize she did it,
Okay.
if I have it. But yeah, I would say, yeah, he's taken everything otherwise, and then there's a few days a week where I'm defrosting another 5 ounces for the day.
Okay, and how much milk do you have that you're able to defrost? Are you worried about supply at all?
I am not currently worried about supply. I was freezing 30 to 40 ounces of milk for the first couple months when he was born. It was just wild
Oh
how
my
much I was
gosh.
freezing so much. I did give some away to a friend who was having some trouble. But to give you an idea, he was born March 10th, and I'm using milk, even with what I gave her, I'm using milk from like early to mid-April dates at this point. So not even 2, 3 weeks into the supply that I had. I would say roughly, if I were to keep up with that pattern of defrosting 3 or 4 or 5 ounce bags a week, it would last me several
Okay,
months.
good. So past the 1 year mark for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. And tell me then a little bit. So when you were freezing 30 to 40 ounces per week, was that,
Per day.
I mean, sorry, per day, 30 to 40 ounces?
20 to 30 ounces a day I was freezing.
Whoa, that's a lot. So that
Yeah.
was on top. So was he nursing at that time from the body?
He was nursing at that time,
And
yeah.
so in addition to him nursing, and he was meeting his growth expectations and
Mhm.
everything like that,
Yeah,
right?
he's a beast. He's
Okay,
huge,
okay.
yeah.
So he's always stayed on his curve.
He's at 95%, if not off the curve.
Okay, so he's around 95 percentile and he's always remained on that curve whether he has fed from the body or bottle fed. Is that right? Okay.
Correct.
So what were you, was that from the Haka that you were producing that much extra, or were you pumping in addition to feeding from the body?
I would say that was more so pumping, some from the Haka. I definitely have not used the Haka as much as I did with my daughter simply because he didn't nurse wasn't nursing well. But early on, I would still say it was more the pump.
Okay, and you were pumping because you were feeling engorged and needed to pump, or you were pumping to increase your supply, or you were pumping to store milk away?
I would say the first and the latter. I was never really concerned about
Okay.
increasing my supply. I just have always, I am so cognizant of the benefits of
Uh,
it that I just never wanted it to be an issue. I court
okay.
it. Give me all the milk and make sure I have enough.
Okay. Yeah. And that's not based on any experience you had with your daughter of undersupply.
No,
It's just in your
no.
brain, there needs to be enough. Okay. So were you feeling super engorged early on and had this need to like, "Ah, I
Yeah,
have to, baby doesn't want to nurse. I need to relieve the feeling in my breasts."
probably a little bit of both. Relieve the feeling and just start my stash.
Okay. And when did you notice, at what age did you notice him starting to refuse the breast?
This whole 7 months has been such a blur with exhaustion. So
Mhm.
I would say probably maybe around the 3 month mark, if I had to estimate, was when there was almost this flip flop of going back to nursing overnight as opposed to the bottle overnight, and then him taking the bottle during the day and not nursing during the day. Kind of like this switch.
Okay, and before that, so from, like, 0 to 3 months, how frequently was he taking bottles at night?
I got to a point where it was most nights because he would nurse at night at that point. But my with him being groggy and my letdown being so strong and forceful, he was spitting up a lot, and it was never like a GERD situation or anything like that. I think
Mhm.
it was just the volume, and he just couldn't keep up with it. And so then I was trying to control it a little bit better by giving him the bottle overnight because it was literally like a fire hose. It was just wild.
Mhm. And
I had to have a burp cloth like ready when he came off because it was just going to be spraying everywhere.
yeah, and were you continuing to pump in addition to nursing at this time?
Which I'm sure was not helping the
Right, yeah,
situation.
yeah, yeah. Hey, we're all just doing the best we can, you know?
That's it.
Yeah. Okay. Now tell me some of his behaviors with the bottle. So, you said he takes about 5 ounces at a time, is that right, or more?
Yeah, I would say throughout the day, he'll do the first bottle in the morning where I get that big pump. Before he goes down for his first nap, he takes the least. He might only take 3 ounces before he goes down for that first nap.
Okay.
So then I have some of that milk to push into the day.
Okay.
And then generally speaking, yes, another 2 or 3 bottles throughout the day is about 5 ounces, and then, between bedtime routine starting and finishing is where he gets that 10, all from the bottle.
So between bedtime and 12, you said?
No, that 10 ounces will happen literally within a half hour to 45 minutes
10.
before he's going down for the
And
night.
have you noticed a change in his sleeping? Like, how long has he had 10 ounces right before bed?
Probably the past month.
And have you noticed a change in his sleeping patterns, or they've just remained constant?
It's really always been this
Okay.
way. He wakes a lot between, call it 7, 8, and 12 o'clock. And then I might get like a 3 hour stretch till 3, and then maybe another 3 or 4 hour stretch till 7.
Okay.
But he wakes a lot between that 7 and 12 o'clock mark.
Okay. Right after he's had that 10 ounces, but he always has.
But he always has, even before that 10
Okay.
ounces.
Okay. Okay. And where does he sleep?
Everywhere and anywhere right now that he will go to sleep.
Okay.
Last night is a great example. I have so when we were pregnant with my son, I had said to my husband, "I'm going to get another bedroom set, get him a crib, etc." We opted, let's not get the second crib. Well, my daughter still naps in the crib, and it's at the lowest setting, so it makes it difficult to put the baby into the big crib. So I have a mini crib as well. With her, I used to put her in, and I know there's safety concern around all this, but I used to put her in like the Dakatata, the Snuggle Me right next to me in bed. She slept with me till she was 18 months old.
Mhm.
And she slept fantastic in that. Slept on her back, no problems. She would wake at times, but it was always a quick turnaround to go back to sleep. So he will sometimes be in that. I will sometimes try and put him down in the mini crib. He seems to be more of like a belly side sleeper. So I
Mhm.
feel like he has a hard time getting comfortable. The pacifier is falling out of his mouth, which I've contemplated. Do I throw this thing in the garbage or do I order 15 more? Like, which
Right.
direction do I go here?
I'm very familiar with
Um,
this.
yeah. So last night, for example, he went down in the mini crib. He woke up. By that point, my daughter had made her way into my bed, which she often does around 11 or 12. So then I went into her bed with him and got him back to sleep on her bed. And then he woke up again around 3, which she did as well. So
Oh,
now I had them both up. That's a dagger when that happens.
yeah.
That doesn't happen often, thankfully. So then I ended up with both of them in my bed, and I was a sandwich with one on either side. So honestly, and I did early in the night last night, I do need to commit to some sleep training with him. That's on the radar.
Mhm.
I even tried to get him down in the big crib, just singing to him and patting his little tush and all the things, but he was just not really having it. Wherever he falls asleep.
Okay. I'm very my kids are 10 and 6, or almost 10 and 6, and
Mhm.
we still play musical beds. So,
Yeah.
it's
Yep.
better.
Yeah.
It's better, but I'm very familiar with this. Okay.
Mhm.
So, here's my question with his you can think about his nursing behavior and his behavior at the bottle. I'm going to kinda, like, narrow in on each of those, but just
Mhm.
overall, you've reported, like, coughing and sputtering at the breast because of
Mhm.
fast your fast
Mhm.
and voluminous flow. Is that
Yeah.
accurate?
And that was definitely early on. It's not so bad now. I haven't frozen a bag in a month. That's
Okay.
how it's definitely stabilized. But yes, early on, he definitely did a lot of that.
Okay, and did you ever notice any clicking sounds either on the bottle or the breast?
No, my daughter actually has a tongue tie.
Uh-huh.
My son does not have any ties.
Okay, okay, so no clicking sounds, and when he's at the bottle.
Take that back. I see a little clicking early on. There was a little bit of clicking when I first started nursing him. Never now, but early on, yes, I did notice some
Okay,
clicking.
and when the pacifier falls out of his mouth, first of all, what's the shape of the pacifier and the shape of the bottle nipple?
Oh my goodness. The bottle is Tommy Tippy.
Mm,
So it's like it's nipple shaped.
mhm,
It's round. The pacifier I use with him has a little bit of a flatter.
mhm.
It's like round on one side to fill the palate, but then a little flatter than the Tommy Tippy. I just ordered more pacifiers, glow in the dark ones, so that they're easier to find because that's a fun game in the middle of the night too.
That's so smart.
And
Somebody's gonna be rich off this idea.
the best is when I realize I never put it in his mouth and it's on the dresser, and I'm crawling around the floor looking for a pacifier that's not there because I never put it in his mouth.
Right,
Because sometimes he will fall asleep without it.
right.
So that's so I did just order Tommy Tippy nipples. I noticed that they are pacifiers that are shaped like the bottle that I use.
Okay. Now, have you ever tried to use bottles that are not shaped like that?
I have not. Those are the only ones he's ever used.
Okay. Have you ever used, so you've never used a bottle that has a more kind of gradual slope like this?
No.
Okay. And what's the level of the flow? Do you know on the nipple?
I have a 4 ounce silicone one that he still uses sometimes, and now I've also taken out the glass ones.
Uh-huh.
And I know the glass is faster. The nipples that came with that one are faster than the ones that are on the silicone.
Okay. And does he seem to have a preference between a fast flow or a slower flow that you've noticed?
He will take both bottles, but I would say if he had to pick, it would probably be the glass one with the
He
faster
likes
flow.
the faster flow. Okay.
Mhm.
And when he takes that 10 ounce, those 10 ounces, it's between 30 and 45 minutes that he takes that 10 ounces. What about
At the longest.
at the longest?
Sometimes it's much.
Sometimes he
Yeah.
just slurps it down.
Yeah.
Okay. And what about like a 5-ounce bottle? How long does it take him to take that?
If he's gonna take the whole bottle at once, I would say that happens over maybe 10 to 15 minutes.
Okay. All right. And you've never done a weighted feed to know what he's transferring at the breast.
I have not.
Okay. Okay. So 5 ounces he takes in about 10 to 15 minutes. Now, have you heard the term paste bottle feeding?
I have not.
Okay. So when he feeds, is the bottle more down like this? Or is it more horizontal like this?
Horizontal to start.
Okay, horizontal to start. And then as milk starts to come out, it's more like this. And does he ever
Yeah.
take little breaks? Does he ever pause for like catching his breath, taking a moment, either that you help him to do or that he does on his own?
I would say his pauses are more from a distraction that's happened in the room.
Okay. Very common at 7 months.
And he's like pushing the
Right.
bottle out of his mouth. He's so strong he could launch that thing across the room sometimes.
Uh-huh.
But usually it's a distraction of, oh, what's happening over
Right.
there?
And is he holding
That's just
the bottle himself or is somebody holding it for him?
we're holding it for him
Okay.
still.
Okay. That's what I thought. Okay. You just talked about him being so strong. I was like, is this 7-month-old holding his own bottle?
He tries, but he's not quite
He's not
coordinated
quite there yet.
to just.
Okay. Okay. So you're holding it for him and he slurps it down anywhere between 10 minutes and 25 minutes. And
Mhm.
then when he nurses overnight, how long does it take him to nurse?
He will usually nurse, I would say, same thing, probably anywhere between 10 and 15 minutes.
Okay. All right. And then does it take him a long time to go back to sleep afterwards?
Not
Okay.
typically.
So if he nurses,
Most of the time, yeah, he's groggy all the way through it, kind of those dream feed ideas.
uh
And I'm typically able to put him right back down without having to rock him and do all the things. I can usually put him right back down, and then it's just that a little time from then he wakes up again. But typically, I can put him right back down.
okay. And when you have tried to nurse during the day and he refuses, tell me, are you in like a quiet space where there's nothing for him to look at? You've done all those things, right? Like tried to
I have, and even if I make the room like dark,
uh-huh.
just to say remove as many distractions as
Uh-huh.
possible, he still will find distractions, whether it's the string on my shirt
Mhm.
or anything. He will any distraction.
And he won't
And
go ahead. I'm sorry.
oh, I was just gonna say I'll literally like put him to me, and he's just rolling away from me,
Mhm.
like
And did you ever have any pain while breastfeeding him?
not with him, never.
Okay.
With her, I did a little bit, but I've never had pain with him.
Okay. And any nipple damage or Okay. And no plug
Nope.
ducts, no mastitis, nothing like that.
No, and that's I think part of what I've always been fearful with him is that with my daughter, I did have more clogged duct situations.
Mhm.
I never escalated to mastitis. I definitely have some good tricks that have always worked. And with him, once in a while, I'll feel a clogged duct coming on, and I'm just like praying all day, like, please nurse tonight, because I
Mm.
know that's the only thing that's really gonna to clear it, and he'll clear it in a minute. And the pump, not necessarily. While I do feel it come on once in a while, I think I had it a little bit worse with her.
Okay. All right. And you're able to manage it and okay, a couple more questions and then we'll get into some problem solving. Does he sleep with his mouth open?
He does not, and that's something I've always watched for. I'm definitely cognizant of that. Now, what I will say though is sometimes, even though his mouth seems closed, I'll notice a little puddle of drool
Mhm.
where he's sleeping. So I wonder if his mouth is scooting open a little bit. But for the most part, his mouth seems. Anytime I check, it's always seemed to be closed.
Okay. And does he snore?
No,
Okay. No snoring, no like extra noises during sleep, either napping or at nighttime that
never during nap or sleep. Once in a while during the day, and we joke about it because I have a pug. So he sounds like my pug sometimes, my dog. Like he gets grunty kind of sound coming from his nasal passage.
okay.
And it's not like it sounds wet, but he's not a kid that has a runny nose. Like it's never been anything
Mhm.
like that. I want a little deviated septum or something. But once in a while, I'll hear that during the day. And we kind of, like I said, my pug sounds like that. So we joke about that.
Mhm. Now, you probably aren't going to be able to answer this question because it's probably something I would be surprised if you had done this before, but something that I want you to try to do over the next couple of weeks is when his mouth is closed, take his
Hmm.
chin and pull it down.
Let's see if
Have you done this?
I know what you're talking about because like I said, my daughter has it. My daughter has a grade 4
Uh-huh.
tongue tie, and so I've been taking her to a local chiropractor, and that's one of the things she wanted me to do with her to drop her chin, see if her tongue stays elevated.
Mhm.
But of course, 2.5-year-old, that's not easy to do. But yes, I know what you're referencing. So I'm pulling down on his chin while he's sleeping to see if his tongue stays suctioned to
Mhm.
the roof of his mouth.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and while he's sleeping or awake, either one.
Okay.
Have you noticed because you knew to do this with your daughter, have you tried it with him and seen
I actually have not tried it
okay,
with him.
okay. Because it sounds to me like there might be a variety of things happening. There is some sort of flow preference happening. Now we have to target because you had such a fast flow in the beginning, we have to figure out it sounds like he's a little bit of a Goldilocks kid. It needs to be like just the right amount of flow. And so we have to
Mhm.
figure out what's happening between the bottle feeding and the breast feeding that is creating this preference for the
Mhm.
bottle. There's a couple of things. Who evaluated him for ties?
My pediatrician, and I do have a cranial sacral appointment scheduled for him this week coming, with the same chiropractor who did the oral evaluation on my daughter. So I'll have her check when I take him as well. But otherwise, it was our pediatrician,
Okay.
and yeah, that would have been it, which I know is limited.
Yeah, it's limited. I mean, it takes a lot of specialized training and it's a
Mhm.
functional assessment. It's not just
Yeah,
looking in the baby's mouth, right? So
exactly.
there's a lot of things like the fact that he prefers. Now, I know you haven't given him another bottle type, but for
Hmm.
babies, for all babies really, for musculature development, for good jaw development, cheek development, for creating the correct suction that's going to lead to proper airway health down the line. The bottle shape that we want is more like this. And it doesn't matter if it's a wider nipple or a narrower nipple. Actually, what matters is this gradual shift from the nipple to the base. The the
Okay.
the the bottles that claim to be more like a breast, they are actually the least they create the musculature development least like breastfeeding.
Mm.
Because what happens is when they have that wide base and the teeny tiny nipple, they can only get the nipple.
Mm.
feed. They can't actually go far down to the base. Do you notice where his mouth lands on the bottle, on the nipple?
I think it is past the nipple,
Uh-huh.
but I will definitely pay attention to
Yeah,
see.
because those wider bases, they're not flexible like breast tissue, so breast tissue gets, like,
Mhm.
pulled back, once you get enough breast tissue in your mouth and then you start sucking, the nipple actually stretches and pulls back. You've heard this idea of elastic nipples. Well, we all kind of have elastic nipples. Some are just a little
Mhm.
stretchier than others. And so but bottles don't do that. They remain the same shape no matter
Mhm.
how much force you put on them. And so
Mhm.
babies who prefer, now we don't know if he has a preference for that bottle, that nipple type, or if that's just what he's always had. And it could be contributing to his preference because he doesn't
Yeah.
have to work as hard on that shape.
That's one of the things I've always thought is that he's just yeah, he doesn't wanna nurse because it's not that immediate gratification.
Right, exactly. So, and how long are you wanting to nurse him for?
I would as long as he wants to,
Okay,
honestly.
okay. So we're not talking like, "Hey, we have, like, 3 more months and then you're gonna try weaning." You're thinking, "I'm in this for the long haul, and I would prefer to be nursing up
Yeah.
my body instead of pumping so much."
Mhm.
Okay, alright. Yeah, because, that's a different conversation if we're talking about, like, 3 months as opposed to, like, "No, I really wanna do this for a long time." But it
Yeah, I'm hoping certainly at least a year and a half like I did with my daughter, but my goal with her was 2 years and was cut short just because my supply dropped when I was pregnant.
That's right, okay. Alright, so I would recommend, um sorry, I'm just looking for a different bottle to show you. Oh, yeah. These are the ones I like, and they come in glass and plastic. So
Mhm.
this I'll send you so when after our consult, I will send you extensive notes of, like, everything we just talked about, all my recommendations, so you don't have to worry about
There's my entire
yeah, you don't have to
of
worry
it
about
all. Okay.
remembering anything. You'll get, like, a three-page document with it all, okay?
Okay, awesome.
But this is kind of one of my favorite nipples.
Mhm.
This is called Even Flow Balance. And I can send you a link of it. And may this might be a really slow flow and you might need to increase the hole of the nipple, and I can look and see what other nipple, like, do they have this nipple shape in higher sizes? I think they do, but we'll have to check. This is obviously
Okay.
a small, it's like a 4-ounce bottle. So if he's taking longer than that, more than that, you either have to have multiple or get a bigger size. But
Mhm.
this shape really allows him to kind of do a little more of that muscular development that
Mm.
happens at breastfeeding, to strengthen his jaw, to strengthen his tongue, to strengthen his cheeks, to create the right suction so that
Mm.
it's not just a matter of, like, getting on the end of the nipple, doing little fast little sucks and then slurping it back.
Mhm.
Um, so I would recommend a bottle change and see if we can slow the flow in the bottle a little bit so that he
Mhm.
is not only working harder to entice him to go to the breast, but suctioning as properly as he can with a bottle for that oral benefit that he's going to have from the musculature development. The other thing I would do is I would practice paced bottle feeding, which is slowing the feed down for him. If he's not going to do it himself, you're going to help him a little bit. And there's a couple of ways to do that. You can do it with him lying down and feeding the bottle like this, or you can
Mm.
still do it with him upright, but you're going to make sure that it remains horizontal
Mhm.
because just like with breastfeeding, the flow is
Where
faster
yeah.
in the beginning, and then you have to work harder at the end of the feed
Mhm.
to get it in. So
Right.
you always want to see about half of the nipple filled. This full
Mhm.
nipple filled, but like half of the bigger base part. And then
Okay.
what you can do is as you're feeding him, so in a breastfeeding rhythm, it's like suck, 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 swallow. Suck, 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 swallow. Breathe, breathe, breathe. suck, 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 swallow. So there's this suck, swallow, breathe rhythm that A,
Mhm.
slows the feed down, B, gives them time to notice how full their tummy is. Because just like if I go out to eat and I order like a huge burger and fries and we get appetizers and a cocktail or something, I will eat that all as fast as possible. I have no control. And then
Mhm.
by the end, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so stuffed. I have to unbutton my pants because I ate really fast." But we all know if we can be mindful and slow our feeding down, we will notice that we're full bef- before we hit that like overfilled point. So it's the
Mhm.
same with babies. Breastfeeding kind of naturally creates that rhythm because the milk isn't
Mhm.
just always there. They have to like once that first milk release kind of empties, there needs to be like another milk release and they can create another milk release. Your breasts don't fully empty, but it's just harder at the end of the feed. So it's the
Mhm.
same with the bottle. It is going to be a little more work at the end of the feed if we kind of create that situation. And
Mhm.
so the other thing you can do to create that suck, swallow, breathe rhythm is every few, you know, suck, 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 swallow. And with the bottle, it's actually more like suck, swallow, suck, swallow, suck, swallow. There's not as much of the suck, 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 swallow. So in the middle of that
Mhm.
suck, swallow, suck, swallow, suck, swallow, you can lean him forward. You don't have to take the bottle out of his
Mhm.
mouth because that will aggravate him, but you can kind of lean him forward and you'll notice at first he'll keep trying to suck. But then
Mhm.
after a few patterns of this, he'll just stop and he'll sit there and he'll breathe for a second. And then after a few seconds after he's caught his breath, he'll start to suck again and then you can lean it back because
Mhm.
okay, he's caught his breath, he's ready. So he's still leading the feed, but you're teaching him to take those little pauses which don't happen naturally with the bottle. Does that make sense?
Does make
Oh,
sense. Yeah, it does.
okay. What do you think about those two ideas so far? Changing the nipple type and adding in that paste flow a little bit.
Yeah, I think both are things that I had in mind. I'm like, it's got to be something with the bottle I have to change,
Yep.
and to make the bottle feed more similar to the breastfeed. So those were all things I've been thinking about, but of course, just wasn't quite sure how to implement it. So
Right.
they make complete sense, and both things that I had been contemplating how to do.
Yeah, of course. Like, your baby best. You're seeing his behaviors. You can kind of tell what he needs, but no one's teaching us this stuff. Like, we have to find it. Um,
For sure.
okay. So then adding in the paste bottle feeding and changing the nipple type. Now, I will be curious to know if you change the nipple type, if he struggles more because tongue tethered oral ties tend to run in families. And
Mm.
sometimes there can be like sneaky posterior ties that are hard to identify that make it difficult to create the wave movement of the tongue needed and the proper suction. And so, if there is a tie that is making it difficult for him to move his tongue in a way that's transferring milk, especially towards the end of the feed, or once that initial flow gets happening, which isn't really the behavior he's demonstrated now, but he might have learned after so many attempts at the feed, hey, this gets really hard. And when I take that bottle, it's not as hard. So that could be something to think about. Now, have you done any tongue strengthening exercises with your daughter that the chiropractor taught you?
Yeah, we've been trying to work on that. I have not released her tie. We're just continuing to watch
Yeah,
things. But yeah, there are a series of exercises. Again, she's 2.5 going on 3, so
it's
it's sometimes a
harder.
little tricky to get her to
Right.
do them or do the passive ones. But yeah, she did give us a list of both passive and active exercises. The active ones we try to just make fun for her, and
Exactly.
she's doing the raspberries with her lips she couldn't do initially, and
Oh,
now she is
great.
able to do it. So she thinks it's pretty awesome that she can do it now. So we try to, really encourage her that way. But so yes, both passive and active.
Okay, very good. And can you describe some of is she doing any sucking on any toys or anything to create some tongue strengthening?
She was a thumb sucker for the longest time, and in hindsight, I almost wish she would have continued. She stopped thumb sucking when just shortly after my son was born. Her skin on her thumb was actually starting to break down, so she kind of just stopped on her own.
Mhm.
Um, Currently, I would say, other than like a straw, probably
Okay,
not.
so there's no, like, therapeutic toys that you're using for tongue strengthening.
No, it's like facial sounds and movements, and
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, so there are some and I'll send you some good YouTube videos of these, but because I can't really demonstrate them on your son, but there are some good tongue strengthening exercises that you can do with your finger if he'll let your finger in his mouth. Will he? Does he like to suck on your finger? Have you noticed that?
He would, yeah, he often grabs for my hands, so I
Okay.
think he would.
Yeah, and some of the things that you can do is bring your finger into his mouth and then lift it. So once it goes in his mouth, it's going to
Mhm.
start low on his tongue. So your finger's on his tongue, and then you're going to kind of raise your finger to the top of his palate, touching right behind. Can you feel on your own tongue like where the ridges are? Like on the roof of your mouth, right behind where those ridges are. And see if he follows your tongue up. And then turn your finger around and see if that suction remains and put a little pressure on his tongue. Does he keep that suction
Mhm.
up? And if he doesn't, back off on the pressure, let him bring his tongue back up and then put a little pressure, just, like the same amount of pressure that your chiropractor probably uses on your babies. Like not
Right.
not a lot of pressure, just enough
Mhm.
to have him practice really cupping that tongue and lifting it towards the front. And then
Mhm.
you can do it either like this with the fingernail up or the fingernail down. Slowly start to pull out and
Mhm.
do a little tug of war. Does he maintain that suction or does he lose it really fast? And if he
Okay.
loses it really fast, you're just going to practice doing that for like as long
Mm.
as he's happy. So the same as what you do with your daughter, making it like fun and engaging, noises. It's going to be a fun thing. And if he ever indicates, hey, I'm tired of this, like shoving your hand out, then listen to him because we don't want to create an oral aversion, of course. So,
Yeah.
and when you're entering his mouth, you're going to kind of rub his face like this to like ask permission to come in, and he should
Mhm.
kind of open up. And I'm sure you're familiar with that with bottle feeding
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
So you can do that. And then there are some other exercises you can do to check on his lateral movement of his tongue. How well does he move his tongue side to side? And you can do that by rubbing his gum line and touching his tongue, touch his tongue, and then rub to his left side. And then touch his tongue, rub to the right side. Does he follow you with his
Mhm.
tongue? Because we do want to see that good lateral movement side to side. And then touching his tongue and pulling your finger out and see, does his tongue follow? And just getting him to
Mhm.
stretch his tongue out far. So this is working on upward and downward motion and suction, that cupping, the side to side
Mhm.
motion, and then really extending the tongue.
Okay.
And I'll send you some
Yep.
videos of that. But working on that a couple times a day could just create the strength that he needs to be more proficient at the breast, because if he's
Mhm.
wearing out, even if he doesn't have a tongue tie, sometimes babies just need some suck training for the
Mhm.
musculature development. Is his chin far forward or is it more recessed? Do you know?
I'd say his is more far forward where my daughter's is a little
Okay,
recessed.
okay. All right, that's good. So, how do you feel about doing some tongue strengthening exercises with him?
I'm definitely ready to give it a try.
Okay. Now, obviously, I think coming into these conversations, there are no changes that are going to happen overnight. You have a 7-month-old
Oh,
who has his own
yeah.
opinions about things
He sure does.
already. But you might see some changes over time. Now, as far as practicing on the breast, Have you ever given him a bottle and then brought him to the breast right after?
Yeah, because I've thought, like, okay, maybe he needs
Uh-huh.
give me some food right now, and then I'll be more willing. So, yeah, I have tried that too, and I'd say from time to time that has worked.
Okay.
But, yes, I have tried that with the thought process of, "Let me just fill his belly a little bit first."
Exactly. Sometimes if they're so hungry, it's hard for them to get organized. And then what are like his hunger signals? How do you know that he's ready to eat? Or is it just kind of
Mhm.
like scheduled out, timed?
He'll cry.
Okay.
He has a certain cry that I'll hear, especially as he sees the bottle come toward him, or when he's willing to nurse. If he's on me, I can, hear the specific cry.
Mhm.
And then otherwise it is, I'd say, fairly scheduled based on his naps. Half hour before he's scheduled to go down for a nap, I'm thinking about getting things ready for that.
Okay. Now, does he take a bottle both before he naps and after or just before?
Mainly before, and then when he gets up, if he didn't have a lot, maybe he fell asleep quick, and didn't have a lot before, then I will give him a bottle after as well. And he's starting to eat a little bit too.
Uh-huh.
Not that he's eating much yet, but that's a factor as well.
Okay. And if you were to like pick him up in the middle of a nap and bring him to your breast, would he nurse?
Mhm. I haven't tried it yet. That was one of the suggestions that the
Right.
consultant I talked
Uh-huh.
to in the week made. And I was curious to wait to talk with you too to see what your recommendations were. And I am definitely tempted to do that. I think kind of replicate a little bit more what's happening at night,
Mhm.
in that groggy state that he's willing to nurse.
Mhm.
And then I also have this fear that I'm going to wake him up and not be able to get him back to
I
sleep.
know.
But yeah, that's something I'm willing to try for sure.
Well, so what I'm wondering is you can definitely try that. I'm on board with just seeing would he
Mhm.
nurse in that state. Crying is typically a late hunger signal. And sometimes when we're getting to babies with their latest at their hungriest, they are
Mhm.
less willing to work at the breast.
Sure.
I see
Hmm.
this a lot with newborns in the hospital because they're swaddled, and so they're so comfy and cozy that they're not so the earliest hunger signals and a 7-month-old is a little bit different than a newborn, but the earliest hunger signals are gonna be like, hand in the mouth, moving eyes
Not
and
really.
head towards the person who
Mhm.
feeds
And then the
them.
clenched fist, I remember watching for
Yeah, the
that.
clenched fists. So you may have to keep an eye on him and see if
Mhm.
you can figure out what his earliest hunger signals are. Because if
Okay.
he's not really eating until, and I know this is like in an ideal situation. You're a busy mom, you have a 3-year-old and a baby, you're working in the house, you're managing a lot of stuff. So it makes sense to try to have like kind of a regiment and a schedule and know that these are the times he's going to get fed and they correspond with his nap times. Like I totally get the need for that.
Mhm.
So any suggestions I give, you're gonna be balancing them with how it actually works in your life, and I really want your feedback about would this work? But
Mhm.
if you and the babysitter can work together to look at, "Oh, what are his earliest hunger signals?" Maybe we're getting to him a little too late, and by that time, he'll only accept the bottle.
Yeah. And I would say for the most part, it's not I said crying first, but it's not often that he's gotten to that
Right,
point before I'm getting the bottle. I'm definitely getting to him before he gets that. Sometimes it'll, like you said, life just gets
right,
crazy and then he's crying and I'm like, oh my God, he's starving. Definitely hands to the mouth. And as he's gotten older, which I'm sure is common with babies, that I'm sure those signs change because I
right,
knew them very well when he was a smaller baby, but
right.
now that he's 7 years old, yeah, I think it's gonna be a matter of me watching, you, well, what are those
Yeah,
now?
exactly, and maybe having a conversation with other caretakers too to, like, really be noticing and maybe even your daughter can be involved, like,
Mhm.
depending on how communicative she is, because if we can figure out what's the point at which he he might be willing to breastfeed because he's a little bit hungry, but not, like, super hungry.
Yeah.
So there's like
Mm.
two kind of things you can play with. One, doing some sleepy feeds. Two,
Mhm.
trying to feed a little on the like catching him a little earlier. And three, doing a combo as you've tried before. So getting a little bit of milk in him, and it doesn't have to be a full bottle either, but getting some amount of milk in him and then offering the breast and seeing,
Mhm.
would he make that switch? Do you feel your milk releases, your letdowns?
I feel it,
Okay.
yeah, and oftentimes if I have gotten him to latch, during the day when he's more awake, it's just before my letdown comes in that he's like, "Yeah, I'm done with this."
Oh,
And I'm like, "No, it's right there."
okay. So another thing you can do is if it takes a minute, how long does it take? Once he comes on, how long does it take for the milk to like release?
Say probably 2 to 3 minutes, and I know one of the things the other consultant I talked to about this the other day said to hand express. I did try that once so far. No, it's only been once, and he was done with it.
Okay. Yeah, he might because the bottle there's no like release that you're waiting on. And
Right.
so because I do agree with her that this might be a factor. If he's having to
Mhm.
work for 2 to 3 minutes before that milk really gets going, he's getting some drops,
Mm.
I'm sure, but it's not like the like,
Yeah.
fire hose that he was used to. So it might be that we need to let him know there's milk here for you.
Mhm.
And especially if it's playing into this combo of like his tongue isn't strong enough, musculature development has been geared more towards this kind of Tommy Tippy shaped nipple. Like there are a variety of things at play, I think. This is not a simple situation. It's a complex situation.
Nice. I was like you. I want, like, one answer, and it's not one answer, I
Right,
know
right.
that.
But playing around to see, can you get the milk flowing first? Maybe somebody else can feed him just a little bit from the bottle while you get the milk flowing and then bringing him to the body. Does he like baths?
He does.
Okay. So this probably won't work in the middle of the workday, but like on a weekend or something, trying to do some of those daytime feeds in the bath with him.
Okay.
Because baths tend to be kind of like soothing. If he's in there with you, it's like reminiscent of the womb a little bit. Like it can be like babies who won't latch at all, who have never latched and they're like 3 or 4 months. I recommend this all the time with parents. Take a couple of days to do a few, like you're going to have to clear the weekend schedule a little bit, but if you can find a weekend and say we're really going to go for it on this weekend, and like have a bottle ready so he's not frustrated, get the flow going and be in the bath with him. Both of your like oxytocin hormones are going to be flowing. It'll be cozy, it'll be nice, and just giving him access to your breasts. Whether you
Mhm.
wear a top or not, like that's up to you, but just having them there and available, he'll be right there on you. And he may do some daytime nursing from the breast, and it might be like, oh, wow, this is really nice and cozy. And it might just have like a reset. What do you think about that
Okay.
idea?
Good idea.
Okay. So some bath time nursing and then getting your milk flowing beforehand. And I'm
Mhm.
wondering if I don't think you have to wake him up in the middle of a nap, but let's say he's going to be waking up soon, but he hasn't. Waking him up like kind of towards the end of his nap and bringing him right to the breast in a cozy environment. If he likes laying down, does he lay down when he feeds at night? What's the position that?
I did really well with that for a
Okay.
while, sideline with him, and then he just was like, "Yeah, no, I don't wanna do that." So now even during the night, I do have to get up and sit with him in the chair.
Oh man, and does he prefer like one position?
Yes. Yeah, I hold him cradled.
Mhm. So he's like kind of more across you, like is
Yeah, like belly to
yeah.
belly.
And
Mhm.
have you tried any like laid back where you're more laid back and he's like on top of your body, like on a
I have, and he
couch?
gets mad.
He doesn't like that. Okay. That
Yeah.
might be some, like, I don't know if the chiropractor has given you any, stretches you can do to develop the neck and the back and the upper shoulders. Have you been doing any of those?
Nothing specific. He's always been super strong,
Uh-huh.
and I'm sure I work in orthopedics and I'm around holistic care and stuff
Uh-huh.
all the time, so I definitely know there's still the potential that there could be something underlying there.
Yeah,
But generally, he since day one has always been like very strong. He's crawling now. He's sitting up. He's was always lifting his head like really early on as well. But I'm sure there's some other things there that
right.
could be best.
Yeah, as you know, often when we see babies who have really strong musculature, that's actually like midline tension, and that can make
Mhm.
nursing difficult.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I wonder with the craniosacral work that I'm gonna try.
Yeah.
So I had him at home actually, it was a home
Uh,
birth, and he was born compound, his arm was across his neck.
mhm.
Dosha per se, but his arm was across his neck. So my midwife had to manipulate his arm to get him out. And
Mm.
so some talk to him because he doesn't sit still. He is not a baby that sits still. He's move. So I just wonder if that plays into things too. And that's part of why I'm bringing him for some craniosacral therapy as well.
Yeah, I think that's going to help. I think you're right that that birth experience is probably impacting his nursing. Does he have a preference for one side or the other?
I don't think he does. I think it's probably more me with the
Okay.
preference because of my dominance. So I'm
Uh-huh.
always trying to make sure I switch side to side. But no, I don't think so. I think
Okay.
when he does nurse, he'll nurse from
He'll
either
nurse
side.
from either side. Okay. So I will also send a link to a video of like some stretching you can do to get him like both stretching his neck extended and also, it's almost like tummy time, but it's like with a parent. So it's a little better. And that might, in addition to the chiropractic work you're doing and the craniosacral work you're doing, it might
Mhm.
just improve his musculature development there as well. So I think that's a good amount of stuff to work on. Changing the nipple type and using the paste bottle feeding, trying some sleepy time feeds, whether that's in the middle of a sleep or right at the tail end, having like a cozy bath time nursing experience, even if it's just a couple of times, or even I don't know if he does like a nighttime bath, but trying to add it in there if he does. The tongue strengthening exercises and the like musculature development. And let's see if we can entice him to, and creating a milk release before you
Mhm.
try to latch him. And let's
Okay.
see if you have, let's say right now he's getting 0 daytime at the body feeds. If you could
Mhm.
go to like 1 feed a day in the next few weeks, and then after that, 2 feeds a day, like even just setting a goal like that to say, okay, I really want to get them latched once a day during the day. That's an improvement
Mhm.
from what you're doing now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then also looking for those hunger cues and seeing if you can find a better time for feeding him. If that's something you're interested in doing. I know right now things are, like, lining up well.
Definitely. It's super important to me, so I'm definitely willing to do what it takes and weave it into my day for sure. And then it's just, yeah, having that patience, knowing that it's not going to be just this quick turnaround necessarily.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that. I understand that. And we'll definitely work on all of those things that you're mentioning.
Yeah, so I think if you keep part of this is, like, mindset, so if you keep in mind, "Okay, like, we're gonna try I want 1 successful daytime feed a day for now." That's a great starting goal,
Hmm.
and then
Yeah.
you'll report back to me, and if we need to do this again, we can, and maybe we'll get you to 2 times a day, or you might be able to do that on your own just using these same tools, but I wanna reevaluate in, like, a couple of weeks and see where you
Okay.
are and see if there's
Mhm.
been any improvement or if it just has not changed at all.
I will do that for
Okay.
sure. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Do you have any follow-up questions or like concerns or
I don't think
things
so.
you're wondering about?
It's so many that like I wanted to do, but didn't know how to do.
Yeah.
I knew problems were, but what's the solution. So this is very helpful, and I'm so appreciative of it.
Oh, awesome. Okay, good. Yeah, it sounds like you have a lot of experience in this area and you've been doing your research and your work and you know your children really well. So it's just a matter of like, what are the tools that are going to solve those root causes?
That's it.
Right.
Exactly. Tell me what to do and I will do it, and we'll see where it goes.
Yeah. Well, I so appreciate you being willing to share this consultation with my listeners because this is sadly a problem that many people face, one or the other, either that there's a bottle refusal or that there's a breastfeeding refusal. And sometimes,
And now I've had one of
right,
each.
exactly. And sometimes
My daughter would never take the bottle, and he won't take the breast. So it's like now I have an experience on both sides of the
I
spectrum.
know. I have an episode of somebody who had this same experience. I'll send it to you. But sometimes we just have to peel back the layers and figure out why, like what is going on. And you kind of had some suspicions. So I think you're off to a great start.
Awesome. I appreciate you so
Yeah,
much.
thank you. So there you have it. I loved doing this with Tara. I love getting to do virtual lactation consultations about a wide variety of difficulties. I love talking about low milk supply, high milk supply, oversupply. I love doing mastitis consultation or plugged duct consultations or consultations regarding engorgement. I love doing prenatal virtual consultations. We can even do positioning consults virtually because many times I can direct you verbally and then you're able to move your baby around as I direct you. And the other thing I love to do is weaning consults or helping figure out how to introduce solids to your baby. Can you go on Google and look up the standard information for any of these situations? Yes. Will it be specific to your body, your baby, your schedule, the amount of support you have, the way that your partner feels about the situation, whether or not you're juggling multiple kids or whether this is your only child, because the advice is going to change given your specific situation. So if you heard this and you think, you know what, I think I would like to do that, reach out to me at lo@quavinverseservices.com and I'll get you booked. I can't wait to talk to you. Bye.